Now is the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, Virginia Senator Mark Warner. Thank you so much for joining us, Senator. So the New York Times has reported that the president's been briefed in recent days on options for military strikes against the Iranian regime, though President Trump is said to have not made a final decision. Are you hearing anything? You're the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Do you think it's likely that the administration will move forward with any military action, and should they?
Well, Jake, first of all, the Iranian people want to get rid of this awful regime. We stand with their courage. We don't have great visibility into Iran, and Iran has shut off the internet over the last few days. But if we step back for a moment, Jake, let's look at this. This president, in less than 1 year in office, has used the American military to launch strikes in 6 different countries: Syria, Iraq, Iran, Yemen, Nigeria, Venezuela. He's got 20% of the American fleet off the coast of Venezuela, blockading that country. He wants to increase the military budget by 50% to $1.5 trillion. How does that affect anybody's cost of living? What does that say to young people around the country, which may mean American troops could be deployed all over the world? And this was the president that was supposed to take us out of a lot of foreign wars. I don't get it. I don't understand what his overarching policy is, other than don't piss off Donald Trump.
So you don't support any potential military strikes against the Iranian regime?
I think we should put along with others around the region, as much pressure and support of the Iranian people. But the idea of military strikes, Jake, I know it goes back. The last time America intervened militarily in Iran was 1953, when a CIA-led coup overthrew the Iranian regime to protect oil, by the way. And that ultimately, most historians would say, was what led to the Ayatollah's rise in the 1970s. I think when we mess with the internal dynamics of a country like Iran, which is extraordinarily complex, only half the nation is Persian heritage, we ought to do that carefully, and I don't think we have enough visibility at this point to start at least planning major military actions when we've already struck, as I mentioned, 6 different nations in less than a year.
Former President Obama has expressed regret for not more aggressively supporting Iranian protesters back in 2009. If you don't support military action beyond sanctions, what should President Trump do right now to support the Iranian people?
I think there are ways we can call upon the international community, which, by the way, because we walked away from the JCPOA, doesn't have as much international support. I do think the strike on the Iranian nuclear facilities was successful, but as we showed, it didn't obliterate the facilities, and public reporting has said Iran's in the process of building back its capability. But the idea, and I want to know what the president's talking about. Is he simply talking about another airstrike? Is he talking about boots on the ground in Iran to take out military facilities? When we've already, again, remember, we've got 20% of the fleet off the coast of Venezuela at this point, maintaining a blockade.
Yeah.
So the Ford, which is the aircraft carrier down there, it's supposed to be deployed to the Middle East. Even America, with its amazing military presence, and our military did extraordinary in Venezuela, we get stretched pretty thin.
So on that topic, on the topic of the United States' role in the world, I want you to take a listen to what President Trump told the New York Times a few days ago when asked if there were any checks on his use of American military power around the world.
Yeah, there's one thing, my own morality, my own mind. It's the only thing that can stop. And
What's your reaction?
My reaction is all Americans, and frankly, I got to believe the rest of the world, if we're depending on Donald Trump's morality to decide whether we put troops in harm's way, that is not what our Constitution set up. That is why our country was founded on the notion that one individual can't take our country to war. You've got to consult with Congress, which this president has completely blown off throughout his whole first year. And I would say both Democrats and Republicans alike he's not consulted with. And I think we're in unprecedented ground. Again, 6 different nations attacked by American military in less than a year. And again, many of these regimes are bad guys. I agree. But America, the last thing I thought was Donald Trump was going to be the world's policeman for his moral view of the world. That's not what I think we signed up for.
I want to turn to the ICE shooting in Minneapolis. You have said that all the facts need to come out, that everyone needs to be held accountable. There are Democratic officials who have just declared that this was a murder. Take a listen.
We have seen them terrorize so many of citizens in the 5th District and across Minnesota, and that has tragically led to this murder.
At the end of the day, what we saw today is a murder.
As Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, 2 Democratic members of Congress, do you have any issues with them calling it a murder?
Listen, I've got issues with any public official, including the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, calling it domestic terrorism. I'm a little bit old-fashioned. When an American citizen is killed by a federal law enforcement official, we ought to let the investigation take place without jumping to conclusions. I mean, that's what our system's about. But I do think there are concerns when we've got, remember, we're beefing up ICE, 10,000 more agents. They are not getting the traditional 5 months training. Literally, Jake, the training for the ICE agents now is 47 days. Why 47 days? Because Donald Trump's the 47th president. And the idea of going into neighborhoods and going after folks is not traditional ICE training. I think this is kind of an Orwellian circumstance where we've got cities on edge all across America. We wanted the border shut down. Right, I agree with that. But sending ICE agents into community after community where they're perhaps not fully trained puts us in, again, uncharted territory and not something I think the vast majority of American people want.
To be clear, this ICE agent in particular had at least 10 years experience. He wasn't one of these new agents with a short training.
So be it. And again, that's why there ought to be an investigation. I don't want to claim to be any kind of legal expert, but the idea, my understanding is that the administration is trying to completely cut out any state role in this investigation and handle it entirely federal. I don't think, at least in my memory, that is not the way that you cut out all of local law enforcement in terms of an investigation where there's been a shooting.
Funding for the federal government is going to expire at the end of this month. There's a growing push among Democrats to freeze funding for ICE, even if that were to result in another government shutdown. Would you support that?
Listen, I think we went through the longest government shutdown in American history last year. I don't think we need to repeat it. I do think we need to go ahead and get our appropriations bills done, keep the government operating. And I do hope, and I think we're starting to see a little bit of splintering when my good friend Senator Tim Kaine got the War Powers resolution passed in the Senate the other day. Finally, Republicans are starting to find their spine and saying, you know what, Congress has got to provide some level of check on Donald Trump. Again, go back to Donald Trump's own words. If the only constraint on his power and use of military force, what we've used in 6 different nation states in less than a year, is Donald Trump's own morality, if that doesn't scare the dickens out of you, I don't know what does.
Is there any one of those military interventions that you think we should not have done, the United States?
Listen, I think it is better that Maduro is gone. Yes. Do I think there are bad leaders all across Asia and Africa? Should the American military and parts of South America go after all of those nation states? Should we be threatening Colombia and Mexico? We may not like their leaders, but they were both elected in democracies by their own people. Where does this end? Again, I thought Donald Trump was the guy that was going to take us out of these countless wars. And remember, Jake, we have literally 20% of our fleet, the cost day to day of maintaining the fleet off the coast of Venezuela to maintain that oil blockade so that we can get Venezuelan oil, which, by the way, the oil companies didn't sound too keen about going into. I mean, it's going to take a couple years to rebuild Venezuela's oil infrastructure. Is our fleet going to maintain that blockade for the next 2 years? What are the costs? What does that do to our military preparedness around the rest of the world? This is not the way the president's supposed to operate. They're supposed to operate in conjunction, make the case to the American people, make the case to the world, and frankly, make the case to the Congress.
Senator Warner, thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jake.
President Trump is